Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a psychological quirk that almost all of us experience, but honestly, very few of us actually understand. We're going to break down the totally fascinating and kind of hidden psychological reasons why our brains just outright reject praise. And more importantly, we'll look at how we can finally decode our own minds to just accept it. So I want you to picture this for a second. Have you ever had someone look you right in the eye, totally sincerely, and say something genuinely nice to you? Like, hey, you did an absolutely amazing job on that presentation. And instead of just smiling and saying thanks, your brain instantly hits the panic button. You know the feeling, right? You awkwardly laugh it off, maybe immediately point out a mistake you made, or even feel this bizarre, visceral urge to argue with them about why they're wrong. It's just so physically uncomfortable. Now, society tells us that compliments are just these straightforward, wonderful little gifts. But if you have an overthinking brain, the hidden reality is actually completely different. To your brain, a compliment isn't a gift at all. It's literally processed as an immediate psychological threat. So while it might just look like you're being super humble to the outside world, the psychology behind it reveals there are some deep, deep reasons why your mind is suddenly sounding the alarm. Okay, let's jump right into our first diagnosis, the identity threat. To really get this, we have to talk about cognitive dissonance. You see, your brain is constantly working overtime to build this predictable, consistent story about who you are. Cognitive dissonance is that intense mental tension, that glitch in the matrix, that happens when new information totally contradicts your established internal script. Your brain fiercely resists this mismatch because, psychologically speaking, a sudden change in how you're perceived feels like you're losing a piece of your actual identity. So here is the absolute kicker. If your internal monologue is stuck on repeat saying things like, I'm just average, or I'm replaceable, a genuine compliment literally shatters that reality. It creates massive mental tension. You aren't deflecting the praise because you're trying to be polite. You're rejecting it to keep your internal identity safe, familiar, and consistent. You are actively protecting your self-image. Let's move on to diagnosis number 2, the debt of expectation. Here's a really wild thought. For a lot of people, a compliment is actually perceived as a debt of expectation. When someone praises your success, your mind doesn't just hear nice words. It hears a brand new, impossibly high standard that you now have to live up to. You suddenly feel like you've been forced up onto a pedestal, and when you're up there, there's this subtle but absolutely crushing psychological pressure whispering, well, the only way to go from here is down. And that brings us to this incredibly common psychological loop known as the lowered bar defense. You get the praise and instantly feel that crushing weight of expectation. So what's your subconscious reflex? You immediately downplay your success to lower the bar back down. You eagerly point out your own mistakes just to relieve the pressure of having to be perfect next time. Basically, you're protecting your future self from disappointing people. Moving right along, let's look at diagnosis 3, defense mechanisms and suspicion. Now, this one hits pretty close to home for a lot of us. If you grew up in an environment where your needs were ignored or where love felt really conditional, your brain learned to be incredibly hypervigilant. You developed this deep-seated belief that your value always has to be earned through hard work or sacrifice. So when someone just hands you unconditional or free praise, your brain immediately flags that as highly suspicious. Your mind relies on pattern recognition to keep you safe. When you get a compliment, you might start fiercely questioning their motives, like, do they actually mean it or do they just want a favor? Listen, this isn't you just being paranoid. It's your mind's way of protecting your energy. It refuses to let you get comfortable with a compliment that might turn out to be fake or manipulative. It's an invisible shield built by your past. All right, next up is diagnosis 4, the spotlight effect. This brings us to hyperactive self-awareness, or what psychologists call high self-monitoring. This is when you are relentlessly evaluating exactly how you're coming across to other people. For someone who is, a bit too aware, a compliment acts like a blinding spotlight suddenly switching on. All of a sudden, you're the absolute center of attention, and that can feel completely overwhelming. You can't just hide behind your potential anymore. You are being perceived right now, in real time. And that leads to this reaction. By deflecting the compliment, you are actively making a choice. You are choosing to step out of that blinding, terrifying spotlight and right back into the shadows. Why? Because in the shadows, staying in the planning phase is safe. In the shadows, you get to remain in complete control of your environment and exactly how much of yourself you reveal to the world. And finally, we have diagnosis 5, social camouflage. This is a deeply primal survival instinct. A lot of us weaponize self-deprecation as a vital tool just to stay relatable. We actively mirror the humility of our friends and colleagues to ensure we seamlessly blend in. And the goal here is simple: avoid being seen as different. Because, historically speaking, being different means being separated from the safety of the tribe. So your brain has this very real fear that if you just accept the praise and own your success, you're going to outgrow your environment. It literally fears you'll become distant from the people you care about most. So, to make sure you don't alienate anyone, you purposefully downplay your own worth. You sacrifice the compliment just to guarantee you stay safely part of the pack. Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's talk about decoding your cognitive loop. Let's just quickly recap the 5 hidden psychological roadblocks we've decoded today that turn a nice compliment into an attack. We've got the identity threat driven by cognitive dissonance, the crushing debt of expectation, the suspicion born from past conditional environments, the overwhelming anxiety of the spotlight effect, and of course, the survival tactic of social camouflage. Now, the true breakthrough here is realizing that fixing this isn't about forcing yourself to suddenly love compliments. It's about decoding the silent ways your mind is just trying to protect you. The extreme discomfort you feel, it is not a personality flaw. It's simply a predictable, protective cognitive loop. And once you realize that, you finally get the power to just sit with the praise, observe the awkwardness, and not feel the need to frantically push it away. Which brings us to our final thought. Armed with this empowering new awareness of how your brain is actually operating, I want to leave you with a challenge. The next time someone looks you in the eye and offers you genuine praise, how are you going to react? Challenge yourself to step out of the shadows, quiet that cognitive loop, and simply say, "Thank you." No deflection, no self-deprecation. Because honestly, once you understand your brain, you finally start understanding yourself. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.